So a lot of people are debating about Bank of Canada's ability to raise interest rate because on one hand, they have a struggling economy and huge pile of debt. And on other hand, they have rising inflation, which is going up month over month. So people are thinking, do they have a third option? I think they have. And that option has been executed in the past, so we can learn from it. So in this video, we're going to talk about what is that third option that they can choose, how this is going to be executed, and what does it mean for an average Canadian like you and I. So without further ado, let's dive in. If you are new to my channel, my name is Yasin Nizami and I make these videos to educate my audience about macroeconomics, finance, real estate, general investing strategies, as well as technical sales. If these topics are interested for you, then feel free to subscribe so that you don't miss any future content. All right, so let's back onto our topic. So topic is, what is the third option? So before we go into that, let's understand what's happening. In my last video, I talked about how Bank of Canada did not raise the interest rate on January 26, where everybody was expecting it. And I covered in my last video, how much debt the average Canadian has, as well as the federal government over the last 2 years. And with that pile of debt, it's so risky to raise interest rate, because when the interest rate goes up, the debt becomes expensive and the interest payment becomes more difficult to pay it off. So that is a risk every Canadian and the federal government is carrying on their shoulders, because if the interest rate goes up, things will become very difficult. So on one hand, we have a huge pile of debt, which is going to be very difficult to be paid off as interest rate starts going up. But on the other hand, we have rising inflation, which is going to make an average Canadian's life very difficult, because prices of goods and services, groceries, gasoline prices, rents are increasing. So everything basically what we buy on our daily basis, it's going up almost month over month basis. So things are getting difficult from purchasing power perspective. So the Canadians are really in a difficult spot, where they have inflation running hot, as well as interest rate is about to go up, which will make the debt payment very difficult. So we talked about that and how this is going to be a difficult decision for Bank of Canada and federal government, because don't assume that Bank of Canada is independent. Both Finance Ministry and Bank of Canada, they work hand in hand. So they work in full harmony. I think one of the proof is, over the last 2 years, the entire fiscal deficit has been financed by Bank of Canada, which is somewhere close to $356 billion. Now we know that, what is the situation and how this is going to be a difficult decision for, Ministry of Finance as well as Bank of Canada. Now, do they have a third option? I think they have, and that third option has been tried in the past. So let me give you some context. But before we go into this, let's look at this. So this chart showing you the interest rate variation going back all the way to 1940s. Okay, you can see the interest rate has gone up to the maximum, which was somewhere close to like 20% in 1980s. But before 1980, something happened. So in 1975, when the inflation was so high, somewhere close to like 12%, then the government at that time, run by Papa Trudeau, not this Trudeau, father of Justin Trudeau, they decided to implement Anti-Inflation Act. And what does it mean? Basically, it's price controls. And that act was supposed to control a lot of other things, but predominantly that act was brought in to control wage and price of goods and services. So in 1975, they passed that Anti-Inflation Act in the Parliament, which became a law. And then when they executed that, it started, controlling the prices and the wages across the industry. So if you look at that, you can see that act was passed in 1975 by Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, which became the law, and the purpose was basically to slow down the rapidly increasing price and wage inflation. And then after like 2 years in 1978, this law was repealed, and if we go back to our chart, we can see the inflation was at 12%, somewhere close to in 1975. But then right after 1975, when they implemented price controls, the inflation came all the way down to less than 6%. Okay, and then it kind of jumped back up to like 9%, and then all the way to 13%. But there's some context behind it. So if you go back to the overnight rate chart, you can see in 1975 the interest rate was somewhere close to 8%. Okay, which is much higher than what we have today. So when they implemented price controls, it brought the inflation down to like 6% for some short time. Okay, and then we can see by 1978 that law was lifted, but as soon as they lifted the law, then the inflation jumped right back at 13%, which was the highest in the history. And then in order to tame the inflation, the only way to do that was to increase the interest rate more than the inflation rate. So you can see in the chart, after 1978, when the inflation jumped right back to 13%, then Bank of Canada raised the interest rate all the way to 20%. So by 1980 or 81, the interest rate was sitting at 20%. That finally broke the back of inflation. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here, guys, is right now the inflation, as per government's published number, okay, which is very much questionable, is 4.8%. We can say it's 5%, give or take. And right now the overnight rate from Bank of Canada is 0.25. People are thinking about 4 rate hikes in 2020. By 4 rate hikes, you're talking about overnight rates sitting at 1 or 1.25%, which is still much lower than the inflation rate. So current inflation is 5%. In order to beat the inflation, the interest rate has to be more than that. So if inflation is running at 5%, which I think Bank of Canada said it is going to remain at that level for the remaining part of the 2022, then I think our target to raise interest rate has to be at least 5%, not 4 hikes, 5%, which is 500 basis points. Okay, that's a lot. And if Bank of Canada has to increase the rates to that level, it's going to completely collapse the economy, not only the housing sector, but the entire economy. So that's the situation we are in. So I think if that has to happen, then this will be a political suicide for any sitting government. So they will pick a least path of resistance, which is price control. I think in some shape or form they're already doing it. For example, rent controls, and they are providing some subsidies towards wages and stuff like that. So in some shape or form it's already happening, but it's not forcing manufacturers and food producers to kind of absorb the cost reduction. But I think that will be probably the next step. If they cannot tame the inflation by making 3 or 4 rate hikes, then I guess they will try to implement price controls across the board in order to control the pricing. But as we have heard, implementing price control have a lot of consequences. So you can control the inflation in a short term, but it comes at a very serious cost. Number one, it's going to even make the supply chain disruption worse. Because if you control the pricing, if I am the manufacturer or I am the producer, if you are controlling my price, and I may not be able to make margin on top, then I will not produce enough, right? So that will make the supply chain issue even more worse. And plus, if you force me to sell a product at a certain price level which is not going to match my profit margin, then what I will do, I will produce crappy products, bad quality products, in order to reduce my cost, to keep my incentive, my profit margins healthy. And we have seen that it's going to explode the inflation as soon as we lift those price controls. So the history has shown us price control is good for short term, but as soon as you remove it, it actually causes more damage than any good. So I'm not certain this is going to happen, but this is one of the likely scenarios, because the inflation is so high, even 4 hikes is not going to do anything. So the rate hikes has to be more than an inflation rate in order to tame the inflation completely. Otherwise, these 3 hikes or 4 hikes is not going to do any dent whatsoever on the inflation. And of course, that many rate hikes will put a lot of risk on the economy, because the economy is already struggling. These lockdown measures have done more damage than any good, from cost benefit analysis perspective. All these small businesses have gone bust, and they may not be able to come back. And all the corporations like Walmart and all those big, supermarket giants have made, billions of dollars in profit. So that's the situation we have right now, and just wanted to give you another perspective that could happen, and the time will tell basically. But I think from our side, you and I, an average Canadian, can make some decisions to be ready for that kind of scenario if that happens, in order to protect ourselves and our financial well-being. So be wise, stay vigilant, and make right decision with regards to your investment. So until my next video, take care.